the way that agencies got referrals was very passive. It still is very passive, but it was incredibly passive. And that was what I was kind of decrying. I was saying like, hey, you can grow off of referrals. It's a great way to grow, but you have to have some kind of active thing that you're good at to generate leads off of when referrals dry up.
Welcome to the Digital Agency Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Englander.
So today, I'm very excited to welcome back friend of the show, Nicholas Petroski. So Nick is the founder of Promethean Research, a consultancy that produces the most trusted strategic research in the digital agency industry. He works with agency leaders to solve complex growth, pricing, positioning challenges, and is best known for the widely read State of Digital Services. Nick, welcome back.
Thanks so much, man. It's always good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. I was going to say, to do a quick digression or sidebar, I like your copy and your bio because it's very clear what you do, and I have it in my head because I'm like in the middle of writing a LinkedIn post about how clarity is kind of underrated in B2B copywriting, and something like brand speak is really overrated, where like B2B is already so opaque and so hard to figure out what everyone's up to that most people are making it cloudier. So anyway, kudos.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm really excited to have you back on because I think we're seeing the same things. You with a lot more data than I have access to, but it's always heartening to know we're heading in the same direction. For those that don't know, we've been focusing a lot more on helping clients get targeted intros through referrals and strategic partnerships. Our main thing is called the referral engine, where we're doing some custom data build with training and accountability over the course of roughly 90 days to make referrals more repeatable. Nick, you have a new study out or research project called From Random to Repeatable, the Digital Agency Referral Playbook. So I think we're seeing the same thing, speaking the same language. One thing that you cover a lot of interesting ground in this, and we'll definitely get it linked up. But I believe in the report you said, it's time we put a system around the best source of growth for digital agencies. So I guess like my question is basically like, why now? What made you realize that referrals are the thing to focus on at this moment?
That's a fantastic lead-off question. I love that up front. There was a lot of research that I've done 5-7 years ago where I kind of poo-pooed referrals. It wasn't like, I think I had always framed it as referrals aren't bad, but you got to have something else. You got to have something else that you're going on. And at the time, it was very much a thing where I was thinking that, okay, the referral, I guess, engine, if you're going to call it that, the way that agencies got referrals was very passive. It still is very passive, but it was incredibly passive. And that was what I was kind of decrying. I was saying like, hey, you can grow off of referrals. It's a great way to grow, but you have to have some kind of active thing that you're good at to generate leads off of when referrals dry up. Because at the time they were getting kind of choppy. This was back in 2019, maybe. And so over the last, I don't know, 5-ish years, my opinion on them, I wouldn't say has changed, but it's evolved a little bit. It's gotten more nuanced to where it's saying, okay, if you're not going to bring in some kind of head of sales and go hard into outbound or events-based marketing or like some other lead gen piece, if you are going to live and die by referrals, let's do it. Like let's lock the heck in and let's actually do it in a way where it's effective and it's repeatable and it drives growth in a way that you don't have to worry about it every time.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, and we've seen a very similar dynamic. I think the other thing that there's at least a couple trends that we've seen. I think the first is that people's total addressable markets by and large have gotten smaller, right? As agencies get more specialized, and that's something we've talked a lot about in the past.
And that's a good thing. Like that's great from my perspective.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But I think the cost of that is that like there's more of this needle in a haystack dynamic. So before, when it was like, oh, we're going to go run ads or we're going to go do cold email or whatever it is to reach people, the chances of you like finding the people that you can really truly help it's now gotten harder to do that. Kind of like directly tied to that is just the level of skepticism's gone up, right? So this is measurable in every particular sales marketing domain, whether it's cold outreach, something we know a lot about, ads, etc. So, basically it's like, hey, this thing has worked really well for you. Like, why not get better at that as opposed to like jumping lanes at the supermarket? So instead of like doing a 90-degree turn, you're doing a 30-degree turn. And like, you're still going outside your comfort zone. You're still being proactive and doing the work, but it's in a way that, conforms to the thing that's always worked. So definitely agree there. I think tied to that is like you have a lot access to a lot of data. You've studied this for a lot of years. What patterns or gaps in how agencies handle referrals surprise you?
The question of who to do it, who should do it. Like at the end of the day, you have to somebody has to own this piece. So number one, ownership, like that has to exist. Number two, though, like who owns it it's always a weird question inside of agencies. And from the outside perspective, it's super clear. It's whoever owns the relationship with the account, so the account manager. But that's always it's always a challenging question. It's always challenging at agencies to answer that question. And I think it comes down to what the roles of an account manager, like what the duties of that role should be. And what is an effective account manager? Is it somebody that just retains the account, or is it somebody that grows the account, or is it somebody that maybe utilizes the account to expand to other logos? There's a lot of things that each of those three buckets could do, and it could very easily take up a person's entire 40-hour week.
Yeah, and I've seen it work in different layouts in different agencies. I don't know if there's only one right way to do it, but it's more like one of those things where inversion helps a lot, where it's like easy to tell the wrong way to do it than the right way. Like, I'm not a mechanic, but I know if the engine's on fire in the car, like there's probably something wrong. I think the biggest mistakes we've seen is expecting too much sales activity from somebody that hasn't emotionally committed to being a salesperson, right? So
that is I love that. You got to write that post.
Yeah, I probably should. It's on the to-do list. But basically, like, you could have an account manager that has some commission upside to getting more deals, but 80% of their job is making sure that that account is happy in the normal client service kind of stuff. Expecting that person to go hunt a bunch of new business and outside logos, I think usually doesn't work. Occasionally, maybe you get lucky and you get that person that is the salesperson. But usually what I've seen is it's more common for it to go the other way, where you get somebody that is sort of says, yeah, I'll do the sales thing. It sounds like fun, but they haven't really committed to it. And I've even had people that interview for sales roles, and then I get into the interview and I'm like, this person kind of wants to be an account manager. Like, they really don't want to have to go through that the trenches of hunting new business. So I think that's an important distinction. But I guess, what have you seen though? Like, how are owners sort of thinking about, or let me reframe this. How are the better owners handling this in terms of like building who does what in the referral process?
They're focusing on the stuff that actually moves the needle. So there's a lot that you could do. There's a lot of account management that is performative. There's a lot of sales that is performative. There's a lot of running an agency that is performative. It's the focusing on those key items that, if your goal is to grow an account, focusing on the pieces that actually do grow the account. So there's for an example, cross-selling and upselling. A lot of agencies do it. A lot of agencies don't do it in a methodical, like, thought out way. They're like, hey, account, we built your website. You might want some content for that website. Sound interesting? That's cute. That's nice. It helps. But there's a very methodical way that you could go about rounding out what the value is that you provide. So if you don't just build websites, usually you're not successful if you just build websites. You usually solve an acute problem that person that is buying your services has. And if that acute problem can be solved 90% by a website and 10% by some other piece, whether it's conversion rate optimization or content or it's some other thing, adding that other piece in strategically rather than just saying, hey, here's a list of what we upsell, you see a lot better results.
Exactly. And I think making that puzzle piece as clear as possible, and almost like, like an offer of here's what we're doing for other clients. So wanted to run this by you, and it's kind of making it as easy for them to say yes as possible as versus them having to go do work. So that's kind of the normal blocking and tackling. One thing that you mentioned in the playbook is kind of distinguishing pipeline health, conversion performance, and system health. Is there one of those that you feel like is a bigger blind spot than the others for agencies?
Pipeline health is really apparent. So I would say that that's usually pretty easy to see. Like it's even if it's not something that you can see through your CRM, it's usually a gut feeling that agency leaders have. You know if something's going to have a high rate chance of closing, or if you get kind of like a weird feeling later in the sales process. I think the conversion rates are a little challenging to get accurate and not influenced by like jumps. So you look at your average agency, and they're not bringing in 20 new accounts a week. Like it's not something that you do really rapidly. You're not set up for that style of a ton of data that you can use to get an average, that you can rely on the average for future stuff. Yeah. So when you have that, you have to be really careful about saying, okay, our average conversion rate from this point of the pipeline to this point of the pipeline is X. Well, that can get blown out of the water by, a bad quarter or a slow quarter really easily. And then all of a sudden, the quarter after that, you look like a rock star because your conversion rates have all increased. So yeah, how you use that and how careful you are about the conversion rate specifically is really critical. You can make bad decisions real fast off of averages that you shouldn't be.
Yeah, and I had a conversation yesterday about this with an agency owner where they sort of realized like, oh, we actually need to focus more on bottom of funnel. They didn't use that word, but like our conversion win rate on proposals versus top of the funnel. We happen to help with top of the funnel more. So I was like, okay, there's some other people you should probably talk to then. But the issue is, the thing that's hard about that is it takes a lot more data and a lot more time to work on bottom of funnel to figure out what's going on wrong. And I've also found that it takes some more humility, frankly. Like it's easy to just be like, yeah, we need more calls. Let's go get some more calls. That's just the mechanical issue. It's not, but it's part of it. But it takes more of like, somebody's going to listen to my calls and tell me like what I'm doing wrong, where I'm not being courageous enough, where I'm not pushing hard enough, where I'm pushing too hard, and that kind of thing. So I guess like, what have you seen work for agencies that, in terms of diagnosing that issue and getting help there?
As far as understanding like where in the funnel to focus, or
Sure, yeah.
a really good CRM data is helpful there. Understanding, I just shit on conversion rates for 5 minutes, but I'm going to say like use conversion rates to have an understanding of like where to focus. You kind of mentioned it with being able to focus on bottom funnel requires a much more detailed understanding of the ICP and the buying committee that you're selling into. So if you can blow the hell out of a top of funnel with a really, really broad ICP. Yeah, you can get calls pretty damn easily. The challenge is, once you get the call, to zeroing in onto a pain point that is a real pain point that you can actually solve, packaged and priced in a way that they're used to buying and interacting with solving that problem. If you show somebody a nail gun from 100 years ago, they're going to be like, well, I built a house with a hammer. That nail guns are scary. That makes a big sound. It's the same kind of thing when you're packaging a service. You have to package it in a way that they're comfortable purchasing. If you're trying to sell a website build as a retainer, that's a little bit strange. If you're trying to sell a typical, project structured thing as a longer term MMR engagement that shouldn't ever be in the lexicon of an agency owner, you're going to have a tougher time.
Yeah, and I think this has been covered, and I do want to get back to referrals and stuff. But it's sort of interesting how like there's still this tunnel vision on MRR and on retainers, when reality, like it's kind of always projects all the way down. Like what's the meme with the astronaut with the gun to the back of the head looking at Earth? It's like, oh, wait. always has been, right? It's like, even if you have that retainer model, most of the time there's like, okay, we're going to be at this outcome by this time, and if we're not, you're probably churning or whatever. Like that's basically a project, and it's like you're not going to have the same retention rates that like the actual MRR companies like a SaaS product would have, right? It's just not, because you don't have the volume to actually make that meaningful, and it's just not realistic, for most service businesses anyway. So like there's something about the de-risking that goes into actually packaging it as a project, at least at the beginning. And then the retainer is like kind of just more like a SaaS product. Hey, maintenance, we're going to do these specific things. And
that's pretty
brings a jog.
Yeah. Right. Like your retainer piece was very much stuff that was ongoing kind of valuable work that had to be there. So it was website maintenance. It was content creation and publication. It was social media engagement, ad reformatting and optimization, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think everybody wants to be a SaaS company when in reality they're a professional service company in a trench coat. And that's right. That makes you run into a lot of issues operating like a SaaS firm when you don't have the underlying unit economics.
Exactly. And like, SaaS is always this holy grail, but there are lots of benefits to having a service business in terms of what people actually want, cash flow, et cetera. So that all makes sense. To get back to referrals, because that's what we're here for. One thing you mentioned is the idea of kind of segmenting these referral sources into different groups, like current clients, past clients, business partners, other non-competing agencies, personal connections. Is there one of these groups that you see to be most underutilized for agencies?
I really like to see when a shop has already done really well with current clients, and then they go to kind of ancillary organizations, ancillary services. So maybe not other agencies, but someone like an insurance firm or an accounting firm or a lawyer or some other thing that this company is used to buying, that they are trusted. It's like if you're trusting somebody with your legal counsel or your finances, you're going to trust their opinion on, more than somebody that is just a copy paper supplying or something like that. So going with, another trusted source and finding a way to work with them to maybe further solve or add value to your standard ICP in a way that lets you get natural referrals. Yeah, it's not forcing it. It's not like, hey, I do your taxes. Why don't you check out this guy for your website? That doesn't work. But if you build it in a way where it happens naturally, and this is going to, you're going to have to dial this in based on your ICP's pain points and what they're really going through right now to get that right. But that can be super effective. And that's really rarely utilized. I actually just had a client that did it with really well, where they helped nonprofits, and nonprofits still are going through a bunch of challenges. And one of those challenges was fundraising, and they didn't offer that. And so they partnered with somebody who was an expert in fundraising, do some joint webinars, be able to help their clients, build out, or they did branding and website work for the nonprofits. And they created something where, okay, you can help solve your fundraising, but also solve your messaging challenges and how you connect with your funders kind of thing. So that's the stuff that I see that works really well when done well and is super underutilized.
Yeah, and we've seen that work as well. Maybe I can talk about like the process we're running and kind of what's working for clients, and then I'd love to compare notes and hear what you're seeing. So the problems that we've seen with this is that like it all sounds really good on paper, and then you kind of get on these calls, these sort of partnership, feel out calls, and then one party or the other is like, hey, let's do the NDA, let's do the partnership agreement, let's figure out what's going to look like, and you spin your wheels, and then nothing happens, right? And you go through one of these every few months, and you waste a lot of time. Where what we're trying to help clients do more of now is like actually figure out like who knows who, and are they willing and able to make those intros for you, right? So instead of basically going from like, hey, do you know anyone that we can help, which creates all this homework for the other person, to, hey, you might know these people. Can you help me with an intro? And by the way, like, I'm going to help you as well. And I'll make it super easy on you. And here's a template you can use, and kind of staying ahead of that process. So it's basically like doing an MVP or a proof of concept for that partnership before you waste a lot of time on it. And if you hit a barrier and they're like, yes, but we want this agreement first, fine, but at least you have a way to make it actionable. And that's been the biggest game changer. And it's interesting because it's like, it's high touch, high leverage. It definitely takes some legwork, but it allows you to be lazier than the alternatives. Than if you had to go hit up individual prospects or run a bunch of cold campaigns or run ad funnels or whatever, because you have these high leverage opportunities and you might have a handful of them, every so often, and each one can produce a series of leads basically. So that's what we're seeing, but I'd love to hear kind of like how that compares to your experience so far.
Yeah, I think the way that you're operationalizing it makes a lot of sense. Like there's got to be a structure there where, and I think I touched on this in the playbook, but you want to make this as frictionless as possible for the person that you're asking to do something for you.
Yeah.
Like it's gotta be a low effort lift on their part. And it also has to show them like they have to get something out of this. There has to be, it can be tangible, intangible, it can be monetary, it can be for the love of the game, it can be whatever. It's got to be something that they get out of this. Yeah. And that path of operationalizing this thing, it's challenging to do because you get to that point where you're like, okay, well, what do I offer them? How do I structure this? Do we do a full NDA agreement from the jump? Starting with the MVP thing, like you mentioned, makes a lot of sense. Like it just works better because you get to test out the relationship and you kind of get to drive the car before you buy it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you'll kind of find these situations where like if you make it easy on somebody and they're still not willing to help you, then at least that instead of like spinning the wheels on all this paperwork. But I think you bring up a good point, and I feel that too. I think all of our clients do, which is sort of like, if I ask for help, I feel like I'm taking but not giving, right? And that's always the fear. I think there's a few ways to sort of like reframe that. I think the first is that a lot of the times that fear comes from the fact that in the back of your head that you're giving somebody a lot of work to do, right? So like just reducing the ask mitigates that a lot. The other thing is like making it clear that this is so that you can help that person and share your perspective and be a future resource, not bring them into a sales cycle that's going to be pushy or annoying, right? So that's another way to think of it. And then from there, I think that in terms of like what you're doing for that connector, it kind of varies depending on their situation and their role. But it can be a little bit more broad framed and abundant than just a quid pro quo. Like I'm going to make interest for you, you make interest for me. Sometimes it will be that. And I think that's really good, if you can make interest for them. But it could be a situation like where you're not interacting with another business owner, you're interacting with an employee, and they may want to have that connection with you and help you so they can get a job later on their next move, right? Like that.
Yeah.
Or they might want to know like, what AI tools are you using right now? Like you probably know about things that I don't know about, and I'm always looking to keep my finger on the pulse. Another thing that I didn't even think about until I got some referrals the other week was like, somebody said to me, like, this gives me an excuse to reconnect with all these people that I haven't talked to.
Oh, wow.
Right?
I like that angle.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I didn't even think about that. So there's this, hashtag positive sum games abundance. Like, if there's somebody that you really want to help, then they're probably not going to be a good partnership anyway. So that.
Do you ever run into an issue where I've seen this a few times on my end? Do you ever run into where you get the leadership team together and you're like, okay, who do you know? And they get the list and they put all of their eggs in like one or two referral sources. And if that doesn't go perfectly, they're like, oh, referrals are garbage. This whole system sucks. Like, do you ever hit that?
Yes, often. And I think a lot of the times, like with what we're trying to do with the referral system is it's not like we have a bunch of crazy custom data or proprietary. We have a little bit of that, but it's mostly that like everybody's baking this cake, but they're putting the ingredients in the wrong order. I'm not a baker, but like, let's say they're putting the spices in and then they're mixing it. Like it just doesn't work. Like, so
you got to separate your dries and wets. That's what it is.
That's what it, yeah, that's
dries first, wets and dries.
Yeah. I need to get back.
I'll show you.
Exactly. So a lot of it is like, great. So you figured out people that you would ask for a referral. For one, that's not holistic. Those are people that you thought of just randomly. So if you actually take stock, back to the metaphor of like what's in the cupboard and everybody that you forgot about, then you have this batching effect, right? So you're like looking at everyone that you would ask for. We call them referral readies. They're basically like loose connections. They're probably not your best friend from college. They're also probably not somebody that's like one of the million fake connections. So we find they're about 2 to 10% of LinkedIn connections, which is potentially hundreds of people per person that's doing this, right? So, and then from there, that's not far enough though, because like, okay, you have this partner, you have a hypothesis that they might be able to help you, but then they don't really have connections. Like maybe they're not in a sales role, maybe they just are new, maybe for whatever reason they're not connected. So like they might want to help you, but they can't because you've made it hard on them. You said, hey, do you know any CMOs and growth stage fintech companies? Let me think about it. Like, come on, nothing's going to come of that. They're too busy. It's not, they want to help, but they can't.
Yeah, so that's you want to hang out with is that specific ICP.
Yeah, exactly. You know them pretty well. So it's really about closing the loop. It's like getting everybody in one bucket that you would ask, and then figuring out who from that bucket knows everyone that you want to meet, and then ranking them so that you know, like, it's worth my time to get on a call with Nick because Nick knows 100 people that I would want to meet. And like, granted, I'm not saying, hey, Nick, introduce me to 100 people. I'm saying, hey, Nick, we've literally done this before. Here's a bunch of people that I want to meet. Like, are there one or two that seem like they could be a fit? And like, and I'll make it as easy as possible. So you get into the habit of doing that. And in my experience, it replaces like all the cold outreach, all the cold calling, all that stuff. It's a lot more pleasant of an experience in the grand scheme of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what we've seen work. I kind of want to move to bigger picture stuff. So you emphasize that like good work isn't enough. The referrals are about discipline, relationship management. Can you talk about like what cultural shifts you think need to happen for an agency to operationalize that? If that makes sense.
That's a good question. There's an inertia around a lot of the roles that typical agencies bring on in the account management space. Even in the sales space, it's a strange type of, even calling them biz dev instead of sales. Like there's the terminology that your standard agency leader wants to use is different from the market. That then flows into the expectations from those roles being different than what the market would expect. Like if you think of an account manager at a digital agency versus an account manager at a SaaS firm. Yeah, like they're doing different things, and this isn't a size of agency thing. I mean, I've seen this all the way up to the large holding companies, where the sub agencies in the holding companies, the account managers there was one that had maybe a Fortune 5 company that she was in charge of, and her idea was, my job is just not to lose this client. Like that's the mentality. So when you think about like a cultural shift, back to your question, like what needs to change to make this more effective or more viable at an agency? It's really an understanding of what the roles should be and what the jobs to be done are for these various roles. What is the goal of having an account management? Back to what I said earlier, is it to grow an account? Is it to maintain an account? Is it to just not let them leave? Is it, like what do you need out of this role? And that's a tough thing for a lot of shops to really define. They instantly go, okay, well, what's the job description? Let me jump on whatever the hell site, whatever HR consultant you're working with and say, I need a job description for this role. That's a really horrible way to start that. That's very much just reversion to the mean kind of thing, ticking boxes. Yeah, that's not a strategic choice of we're hiring this person to solve problem X for us, and they need to be able to have these skills to do that.
Yeah, you've touched on a lot of interesting topics. I think the one thing is like you can sort of rationally justify it if you have a Fortune 5 client and they're like this huge percentage of your revenue. It's like on paper, yeah, it makes sense to have somebody whose job is simply keeping this client. But there's something that's kind of like wrong with that, just because in this day and age, the chances that company is going to keep you around for more than a couple of years just are dramatically low. Like there's just a lot of bouncing around. And that person's set up for this really kind of like negative situation where if they lose that client, their job's on the line, they're probably staying up at night whenever that client's unhappy. It's not a good place to be. So I think it really is about building more of a sales-based culture, even if that account manager isn't in a sales role, even if you have that account manager bringing in the salesperson, or say having a trigger that's like, they're happy, you should go ask them for referrals and here's how to do it, having something to that effect, so that it's one of those kind of like best defense is a good offense kind of things. Yeah,
absolutely. And there's a it kind of goes back to I don't know if I hammered this point home yet, but the idea that sales isn't a bad thing. Like if you're doing good work and you're creating value for your client, you would want to spread that everywhere. You wouldn't want that all over. Like it is a disservice to the market to hide the value that you can bring. Like it's really like a strange kind of mental shift that needs to happen for a lot of these people inside agencies, where if you, again, qualified, if you do good work, if you do create positive or more than one ROIs, you have to bring that to other people, and you be basically saying, well, I'm not going to go ask for a referral because I don't want to be salesy. Well, I get that. When you say that, you don't want to be pushy. You don't want to be an asshole. You don't want to be the car salesman. But that archetype isn't what is successful at a professional service org. The consultative art side is the thing that works. Being able to walk in and say, hey, client, I know that we've been able to solve X, Y, and Z for you. This has resulted in this, your ability to go play in a market that you weren't previously able to work in. We would like to do that for others, that kind of thing. Like that works very well, because then they're seen as a source. Your client is seen as a source of value for somebody else. That's that intangible piece where you've got to get something out of it to refer somebody. So it really is a mindset shift in what is salesy, that has a bad kind of connotation for a lot of people, versus what is looking out for the value of a lot of other people.
Exactly. And I think going back to like that Fortune 5 example, sometimes if you ask for a specific thing, you end up getting a lot of information about the actual situation. The best case scenario is that Fortune 5 account manager has a happy client, and then they say, hey, we'd love to see, how else we can help your organization. Can we jump on a call to explore? Like, you might know some people I'm hoping to meet. Can we talk about it? Hey, I saw you might know these people. Would you feel comfortable with intros? Well, actually, this person, like, we don't trade intros. This team is doing this other thing, or we don't like them, or we don't want to share this resource. And at least that, and that the chances of you growing in that account are low. Or they say, yes, of course, happy to help, but then you get intros from it, right?
Absolutely.
There's something to that. That all makes a lot of sense. So what was I going to say here? I had something in my head, but lost it, which happens sometimes. I guess, like, kind of thinking about bringing, like, kind of back to, I remember what it was now. I'm going to try to edit this out. Kind of getting a little more tactical. One question that will come up a lot is how to incentivize account managers and sort of those structures and how that works. I've seen a million different models. Do you have any insight into that? And have you found any kind of best practice for how to develop these account manager structures?
Yeah, it goes back to what you want out of the account manager. So incentivize what you want to happen. If you want them to go through the motions and check off boxes, a salary that is 100% fixed is a really good way to do that. They'll check off all their boxes. They'll do a little bit more than what's required to not get fired, and they'll do the thing that you want them to do, for the most part. If you want them to grow accounts, then you have to incentivize the account growth portion of it. I like the idea of a base salary that is large enough to remove stress. So they cannot be stressed about finances at home. You don't want them making decisions where they're in a position where they have to close this account, they have to grow this, or they're going to lose their house or something stupid like that. So 100% commission stuff right out the window. That's idiotic.
Yeah.
So pay a salary that is enough to create a level of safety so that they can make the right decisions to grow the accounts.
Right.
That it's hard to put a number on that for standard sales. I like a 60-40 split where 60 is the base and 40 is the variable comp. So your on target earnings, your OTE is going to be, say, 100K, 40K is going to be variable. That's going to be bonuses and stuff. For an account manager, I don't love going that high. It seems like there are some checking boxes that have to happen. And so you can get away with a 70-30 or an 80-20. That makes a little more sense because they're also not having as many chances to grow the accounts as a traditional salesperson. So they don't get as many at-bats.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny, like I hear it less now. So I like to think optimistically, like people have gotten smarter, but I used to hear a lot of, well, let's do like commission only. Because like, if they're hungry, they're going to make their way. And it almost always fails, especially for upmarket complex services. And then like, if you really want to make it work, you better have a crazy lead gen system and you better get used to a churn and burn sales model where you're hiring and firing constantly. And so that's not most of our listeners that can withstand that. So that makes a lot of sense, Nick. So beyond that, kind of getting towards the end of our time, what are you working on? I know you have a peer group with Delphi. We'd love to hear about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we just launched this about a month ago. I don't know when this is airing. We launched this in October. What we want to do is we want to understand what is going on in the marketplace for agencies at a quarterly basis. So we used to ask annually, how's business? How is growth? How's the pipeline look? Where are you seeing strength? Where are you seeing weakness? What we've done is we've created this insight network exclusively for digital agency leaders, where they can get those questions answered on a quarterly basis. So we ask about last quarter sales pipeline, next quarter sales pipeline, what industries are strong, what industries are weak, what services you're seeing strength in, what people not buying anymore, that kind of stuff. We put that all together into a really like short, actionable brief. Like the point of this thing is to be able to use it to make decisions off of. So it's not some 70-page report. It's like a maybe 1,000-word brief, 1,200-word brief. And then we share that with the entire network every quarter. So if you're interested in something like that, if you're interested in answering, is it me or the market? This is the kind of thing that'll be able to do that. You can go to Promethean Research/Delphi. That it's also at the top of our nav on our website. Sign up there and we'll vet you. We'll make sure that you're an agency because that's important for this. And then once vetted, you'll get last quarter's brief and you'll get invited to the next quarter's survey.
Awesome. That sounds really valuable. I love the is it me or the market framing. It's like very simple and something that everyone's always going crazy about. So this sounds like it'll do well. Nick, thanks so much, man. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's always good to see you.
Yeah, likewise.